Today, inshallah, we are going to talk about issues related to the sisters, the feminine discharges. Okay, and this is very important for sisters, and men should also know these topics for the reasons I will mention later. But this is something which needs to be known to many people because of the topic itself. Many people are shy and they do not discuss it, and women and also men fall into the trap and they do things which they are not supposed to do because of the ignorance. So there are different kinds of feminine discharges that sisters need to be aware of. The first one, hayd, that is the blood that comes out during menstruation. The second one is nifas, which is the bleeding that happens after the childbirth, the postnatal bleeding. We are going to cover, inshallah, all these in details, but this is just a summary of all the different kinds of discharges that sisters have. And the third one is istihada, and this one is also the bleeding that occurs in sisters, but it's not during the period of menses or after the childbirth, but this is something irregular, and there are basically different kinds of rulings associated with these different discharges. So that's why we need to differentiate between them, and we need to know what is allowed and what is not allowed, and what we should do and what we should not do. And the fourth one is called al-qassat al-bayda, which is the white discharge, which indicates the end of menses and the nifas. Inshallah, we'll talk about that as well. And finally, we have the moisture, or the spotting discharges, the transparent discharge, and so on. So, inshallah, let's talk about the different kinds of these discharges in detail. So this topic is about hayd and nifas, which are always mentioned in the Fiqh of Tahara books, and this has to do with the monthly cycle of women, the menstrual blood, the menses. Okay, and there are a lot of topics to discuss under this, and the reason why we have to make a halaqa topic out of this is because there are lots of rules when it comes to this. There are things you cannot do. There are certain kinds of worship you cannot do. And even if you cannot do certain kinds of worship, there are some of them which you have to make it up. So what are the things that you have to make it up and what you don't have to make it up? So those are the things we'll also discuss. And also regarding feminine discharges, like there are different kinds, different types of them. There are like about 4 or 5 which we'll discuss, and sisters need to be aware of all these different kinds of discharges. If they do not know how to differentiate, then there's going to be a problem in how they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they have to know when something starts and when something ends, which one is pure, which one is impure, which one they have to clean, which one they can get by if they don't clean. So those are different kinds of fluids or discharges that they should be be aware of. And also, not just spiritual actions or spiritual worship, there are certain worldly actions. They have restrictions on those as well. We'll discuss what are those. They have to be aware of those as well. When they are in menses, they cannot do certain things. Okay. And also, this topic is important for sisters because in today's generation, there are a lot of abnormalities. So, especially because of this birth control and contraception, the pills that they sell, because of this, there are a lot of irregularities, and because of this, many fiqh questions they usually asked by sisters. So, whenever I take classes in AlMaghrib and there's like question session, when the sisters ask a question, it's 50% of the times it's related to this topic, because this topic it can get complicated for certain sisters. So they ask these questions a lot. So inshallah, whatever I know, whatever I learned from my shuyukh, I will share that knowledge with you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created our bodies in certain ways. We eat food, we drink things, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes these liquid to come out. We urinate, we go to bathroom. So this is a system inside us, right? So if this is important, if this doesn't come out, like for example urination, the body gets messed up. So this has a purpose. Our body inside us, it has a purpose, the organs. Similarly, when it comes to women, they are designed differently by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And the main purpose of this hayl, the purpose is, if you remember from your biology class, it's the human reproduction. So every month it prepares itself to get pregnant, to bear a child, to conceive. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes that opportunity to happen, and if it doesn't happen, it goes out in the form of blood. It's called hayl. So this topic is important because this hayl, it causes you to get into major impurity. Remember from the very previous classes we talked about major impurity, minor impurity, and the state of purity, the 3 states of purity. So major impurity, when you are like having major impurity, you cannot do lots of worships that we discussed. So spiritually it's impurity because your body is inside preparing for a baby, and the soul, it gets impure. Spiritually it is impure, just like the janaba that we discussed last week. This is the same thing. But physically also, maybe you can take as many showers as you want, but you are classified as a sick person. You have sickness inside you because of the weakness that is caused because of the system, right? So inshallah we'll get into the basics of it. Some of you already know all these things, and if you remember from your school or the biology class, but I'll go over it just for someone who do not know, and especially brothers, they need to know this topic because during the time of menses, women go through certain states, and if men do not know these, and that's something not good, because women in these days need a lot of support from men. Okay, so we'll go over those psychological things as well, but if they do not know, if men do not know, the problems can happen. Their expectations do not match, and that's the reason it's not a good sign. Now the hayl, this is an Arabic word. English it means menstrual blood. Okay, it means menstrual blood. Menstruation, which is the bleeding itself, that's what it is. But the duration of bleeding, that is what we call menses. Okay, the 6 days or 7 days. Inshallah, we'll discuss the different durations. But the important thing that you should know, that when a woman starts her menses the very first time, we say that she has become an adult, a full-fledged adult. It doesn't matter when it happens. So Islamically, she is an adult, okay? Meaning that she has to offer her obligatory prayers, and if she has money and all the conditions are met, she has to go to Hajj immediately, or whenever she has opportunity. This can happen 10 years, 11 years, but this is the sign of adulthood. So in Islam, there is no concept of teenage years and 18 years you will become an adult and so on, like this country has. So you have to know that you become a responsible person, and if you do not do the things which Islam asks you to do, you have to answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you, you reached the state of adulthood, the state of puberty. So you got the sign of puberty and you did not do certain actions. Now you have to account for it, why you didn't do or did something. So this is the reason why you should know the matters related to it. Now what is this blood? What does it look like? And I'm going to discuss different kinds of blood and discharges, and need to be aware of these different characteristics of these, because if you do not differentiate, if you do not know how to differentiate, you might be calculating the start and end of this discharge incorrectly, or the duration of menses incorrectly. So menses, as we have a hadith in Abu Dawud, the color of this blood, it is dark red, it is black, or it's very thick and heavy in consistency. Okay, and in odor wise, it is said it's very strong, it is very offensive, and the characteristic also is that it does not clot like other blood. It does not clot. And it is the origin of this is from uterus. It's not from vein. And we will discuss another kind of blood which is under istihada, which comes from vein. And there's a completely different rulings on istihada. But hayd, this is the characteristics. And just for you to know, the usual period of menses, its duration is from 12 to 50 years, give or take plus minus 5 years. And after that, it ceases, the menses stop. So you can say, when a baby is born, she is probably having like 400 to 500 eggs in her body, a basic unit. Like we have sperm from men, and from women we have this eggs. And these are the primary things by which we are born. When these two are combined, when the egg fertilizes, because of that, we are born because of that. So every month, one egg is released, and it has like 24 hours to get fertilized. If it does not, then, body in 2 week cycle, it gets rid of everything, and the bleeding is a sign of that. So this is the cycle, and you can find all the information on it online. But the thing here that I want to mention, that the duration, you have to know about these in particular. So generally speaking, it's about this cycle. It happens every month. They say it's 28 days. Some, you can add or subtract 7 days from it. So 21 to 35, it's like normal. Most people have like 28 days. And the duration of that, it is about, normal people have 5 to 7 days, and some women have more than that, maybe 10 days, and some might have like even just 4 days. That is possible also. And after like they reach 45 years or 50 years, when all the eggs are exhausted from their body, they reach a state called menopause, meaning they will not have any more menses or no more bleeding. Okay. So there are a lot of hadith from that perspective, but just for your information, there are 2 kinds of women who do not have menses. Apart from reaching menopause and also the children, there are like pregnant women. Usually they will not menstruate, they will not have this bleeding. And also the breastfeeding women, that's very rare. It's possible still to have menses, but the cycle is not the same. It might get delayed. Now also something that women must know, that this bleeding, which I said is thick and heavy, this will change over time. Like maybe it starts with being thick and heavy, and after 3-4 days it reduces in consistency and might become very thin, and it can be like become brownish discharge or a yellowish discharge. And as we will see how we know the end of menses later on, but there is like a white discharge that comes out, which indicates that's the end of menses. And we'll also discuss different ways of finding out when the menses ends, what happens when there is complexity and confusion. Inshallah, we'll cover that, but that's the usual sequence that happens. Now also, just very quickly about the menstruation period itself. The woman is not the same, okay, how she was in regular days. The way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them, as I said, it is sickness, meaning that she physically is sick. There will be a sign of cramps or backache. Different women have different kind of signs, but a woman is basically under stress, okay, and she feels uneasy because of this process. And it's very common to see women getting depressed easily, or anxiety, emotional, and the tears, the hormones that are emitted, it's very easy to cry. So those are the signs that are seen. And the reason I mentioned to brothers here is that you should know that when a sister is in her menses, don't have a lot of expectations from her. Don't think that she is the same person. Some men are very harsh. They say that these are my rights and I want my rights from you. Okay, so this is not correct, because if a person is sick, we show them extra kindness, and we don't worry about our rights when a person is sick. We give away our rights and do not take or do not demand our rights from them. And it's You should also know that women, since she's going these psychological changes, the hormonal levels are different now. It's very easy for her to get irritated. Just like a sick person, even men, it's very common that when they get sick, little thing can irritate them very easily. Same thing with women. These days, she gets irritated very easily. So if it's possible that she might argue with you for no reason, even though you are right, it's recommended for men that they let go, give them the Menses discount, as they say. Do not fight with them, do not argue with them. You might be on the correct side, but let them go, let it go. You can discuss it later, but be nice to them, extra kind to them. And this is something you should know. Do not expect the same thing from them. Before I discuss the actual different kinds of discharges and so on, I want to just go straight and discuss the things, the worship that she cannot do and the worship that she can do. I know we covered this in one of the previous halaqas, but this, again, some sisters haven't heard that, or this is, again, very important. If they don't remember, it's a good review for them. The very first thing that the sisters need to know is about salah. Okay? Most of you already know that women in menses, they do not pray. They cannot pray. It's not like they can pray and they don't have to pray, but they cannot pray. They are not allowed to pray. And if they pray, they are committing a sin because it is considered disrespect. And some scholars even went to saying that it's an act of kufr. I think it was Imam Abu Hanifa who said that. But regardless, this is something, you should pay respect to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it is something that you should not pray, then you should stay away from it. Okay, now this is simple to know that, okay, you cannot pray, but there are a few things that you need to take care of. For example, say it's Maghrib time, okay, and Maghrib Adhan happened, and there was like half an hour you still didn't pray, and then you noticed that your menses started, okay, and you were about to pray, and then you noticed that you have your menses now. So obviously that cycle has to go 7 days, 8 days, you wait. So do you have to make up that prayer? So generally speaking, if you are in menses, you do not make up the prayer. It's given as a discount to you. You do not have to make it up. Salah, you don't have to make it up. But if you entered a time when you were supposed to offer prayer, and you were thinking to offer prayer, but menses started that point. So the opinion that I follow is that you have to make it up, make that one. It became qada. So later on, you have to make it up. Okay? So if you were obliged to pray for that prayer and you didn't pray, you have to make it up. And similarly, on the other side, for example, Isha starts at like 7 o'clock, okay? And Maghrib is at 6 o'clock, for example. Okay, and now you are in menses all this time, and at maybe 6:40 or 6:45, you saw the white discharge, and you said, okay, here I am. This is the end of my menses. Okay, so now you have like 15-20 minutes remaining for your Maghrib Salah. So the scholar here, the Ibn Uthaymin rahmatullah, he said that she needs to pray Maghrib. She needs to pray Maghrib, even though it's very little time, so she has to quickly take a shower so that she can get out of her menses, and she has to make up the Maghrib Salah. She cannot take that concession that she is not allowed to pray anymore. Okay. Now, this is important for sisters because some of the sisters work, and if they are in their workplaces, and for example, they went in the morning, 8 o'clock, they're working, and Dhuhr time, maybe it starts at 12 o'clock. Just at 12 o'clock, you also notice that I got a white discharge, which indicates the end of my menses. Now, she's not going to be back until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock home to take a shower. Without shower, she cannot start her salah. So what should she do? She will skip her Dhuhr, Asr, and these days Isha starts at like 6 o'clock, right? And she's going to miss even Maghrib, even Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib. So the scholars said that, if it's possible, she should come back home and take a shower or wherever and she should pray Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib, whatever time she was responsible to pray. So some sisters are not careful about it. They're like, oh, I'm going to make it qada, it's okay, I have concession. No, the time comes, you have to pray. Okay? Do not take it lightly. But of course, it's extremely difficult, extreme hardship. You cannot take a shower. Then, of course, for excuses like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has some concessions. But if it's possible, if it's easy enough to take a shower, then you should come back home and take a shower. And next topic is the fasting. Fasting and Salah, there are similarities and differences here. The similarity is that just like Salah, you do not fast. You are not allowed to fast even. It's not even an option for you. You cannot fast. And but the difference here with Salah is that Salah, you didn't have to make it up. Okay? All those 7 days of Salah, you don't have to make it up. But fasting, you have to make it up. If it was obligatory fasting, you have to make it up some later time. It doesn't matter when, summer, winter, but very quickly, as much as possible, you should try to make it up when you are not in your menses. Now the same thing with fasting. Many sisters have this question. What if I was fasting all the day and Maghrib was at 6 o'clock and I started my menses like probably at 6:30. So there was just half an hour remaining to complete her fast, but just in half an hour before the Maghrib Salah, she had menses. What should she do now? So her fast is gone basically. Okay, so she has to make it up. She has to make up that fast. Can she eat in that 30-hour period, 30-minute period? She can eat, but that's permissible because her fasting is no longer valid, right? It's gone, so it's permitted for her to eat. And even during the days when she is in her menses, she can eat, of course. She doesn't have to follow others. Well, if you look at the other situation wherein she was in her menses for like 6-7 days, and it was like suhoor time, maybe in the morning, like 4 o'clock, 4:30. She saw her family eating, and then just before Fajr Salah, just 5 minutes remaining before Fajr Adhan, she saw that she became pure. She saw the white discharge. Now, does she have to fast? Yes, she has to fast because she was pure from her menses just before Fajr, right? The start of Fajr, so she has to fast. But if the start of menses happened after the Fajr Adhan, then she cannot fast. Even if it was like 2-3 minutes after Fajr Adhan, she cannot fast. But if it was 1 minute before Fajr Adhan, she has to fast. Now remember here, as I said, she has to take ghusl in order to come out of menses, but we see the time when her menses start or when menses ends. Okay, so ghusl is not taken into account into these timings. The other thing is that the tawaf is prohibited, so she cannot make tawaf in Masjid al-Haram. Okay, because this is a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Aisha radhiyallahu anha, do everything that the pilgrims do, but do not make tawaf until you are pure. Okay, and inshallah, when we discuss fiqh of Hajj, we will discuss about what to do when the group is leaving, because you cannot complete your Hajj until you do tawaf al-ifada, the tawaf of Hajj. So inshallah, but that's the general rule here is that she cannot do tawaf. The other thing is the touching of mushaf. She cannot touch a mushaf or a Qur'an with her hands. Okay, that is prohibited because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. No one can touch except the purified, the Qur'an. Okay, now we discussed this earlier also, that scholars allowed the woman in menses to touch a Qur'an with a barrier. a barrier like gloves or a piece of cloth or something, she's allowed to touch it, and she can also read from the Quran. Okay, and also if there's like an electronic item, there is a desktop computer and the Quran is displaying there, she can read. This is different from a person who is junub, which we discussed last week. He cannot read Quran until he takes a shower. Okay, but for women it's not that same, because if she's in her menses, she just can't go to the bathroom and take a shower and say, okay, I'm done with my menses. No, she has to wait that whole period, the 6 days, 5-day period. So the scholar said that it is permissible for her to touch and even read Quran as long as she has a barrier. It doesn't matter if it's electronic device or not, but there should be a barrier. Electronic items, it's not considered Quran, so you can touch it even with your hands. It's a mirror reflection. Just like when you stand in front of a mirror, it's like a reflection. Same thing with electronic gadgets. It's not same. You're made to see some light which resembles Quran, but it's not real copy of Quran. Okay, and what about tafsir? Can you touch a tafsir book? We said you cannot touch a Quran book. Can you touch a tafsir book? So the scholars mentioned that you have to check how much Quran is there and how much of the tafsir is there. If the tafsir is almost the same or more than the actual Quran, then you can touch it because it's no longer a Quran. But if Quran is the majority portion of the book, then you cannot touch. Otherwise, tafsir book you can touch, you can read Ibn Kathir in your menses, there is no problem, inshallah. So these were the worship related activities, but when it comes to worldly activities, there is one or two things that you cannot do in menses. The thing is the intercourse with one's spouse, the sexual intercourse. It's not allowed because it's a command from Quran, from the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah, he said that this is an adha, a harmful thing, a sickness, right? And so therefore keep away from women during menses and do not go unto them until they are purified. Okay, and this is something severe also, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you look at the hadith, he was very, very serious. He said, whoever has intercourse with his wife when she is menstruating, he has disbelieved in that which was revealed to Muhammad. So a disbelief is mentioned, and that's why it becomes very serious. It's not a joke. It's not like good thing to do. No, there's no way you can do it. It's haram. Okay, and why can a man and woman, the spouses, why can't they have this relationship with them? Because when something is haram, there is a reason for it. Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't know the reason, but this particular case, we know why it was made haram. Okay. Now, before I get into that, let me tell you that general intimacy between a man and a woman is allowed. It's permitted. It's halal. There is no problem with it. The only thing that is not permitted is the actual act of intercourse itself. That is not permitted. But otherwise, all other acts of intimacy with a wife is permitted. There is no problem in whatever way they get intimate. Now, scientists or the doctors, many people have written about it, that when a woman goes through her menses, the veins inside her, they are very prone to get ruptured or getting damaged, and it can cause infections also, and women's organs inside it can get damaged also. Its injury can happen, and there can be inflammation and all kinds of things. And also because the foreign organ is introduced in our system, the bacteria and these organisms can enter her body, but you should know that this is the time where your defense levels are very down. So it's very easy for you to get sick. So because of this act, the bacteria enters into your body and it's very dangerous for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prohibited. It's haram to have this act. SubhanAllah, at that time nobody knew about these medical knowledge, veins getting ruptured and this introduction of bacteria. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He commands something, there is always a reason behind it. Maybe 50 years, 100 years from now we will discover more things,
But the thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us. He created our organs, He designed it. He knows what is good, what is not good, what should be done and what should not be done. SubhanAllah, it's very amazing the kind of detail and a kind of openness that we have in Islam, that even our mother Aisha radiallahu anha, she was very open. She discussed her private life in front of public, so that we can understand the basic rulings. So for example, in Sahih al-Bukhari, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, if one of us was menstruating and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to be intimate with her, he would tell her to wear an izar, or the waist wrapper, and at the peak of her menstruation, so that he is aware to avoid intimacy. So then he would be intimate with her. Okay, so that he knows that she is having her menses. So this was the thing that he would do. So he would be intimate with her, but not do this act of intercourse. So that's the hadith that we have right there. Now, what if husband and wife, they still do this act? Okay, for some reason they still chose to do this act. What will happen in that case? So there is a hadith about it, a Sahih hadith in Abu Dawud. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that if someone had intercourse with his wife when she was menstruating, let him give a dinar or a half a dinar in charity. Sadaqah becomes compulsory at this point. Okay, they have to give sadaqah, a penalty. So yeah, it says 1 dinar. 1 dinar is like 4.25 grams of gold. Okay, so the gold rate is like how much these days? $40, $50. So about $200. Okay, half a dinar is 100 and 200. So that's something. It's not something you can ignore. So not only you have to pay sadaqah, you have to also ask for forgiveness because you have committed a sin there. Okay, and inshallah this charity will help you. But again, as I said, it's a problem. It's problem for men, it's problem for women because of the medical situation here. What if a woman forgot that she was in her menses, okay, and they performed this act? Or what if she was not even aware of this ruling and she did not inform her husband that I was in menses? Or maybe she thought that my menses ended, but actually it didn't. She calculated it incorrectly because probably she did not know about these different discharges, and so she thought that, okay, my menses ended, but in fact it's not. So all these situations, so scholars said that these are valid excuses. If someone doesn't know the ruling, or if they forgot, if they are incorrectly estimating, or even if they are forced, so she is not liable for it and the man is not liable unless it was forced. Then of course the man is in big trouble, not only because of the sin but also because of the enforcement that he's doing. Okay, now the another last thing that is prohibited in menses is the divorce. Cannot happen during menses. So a woman in menses cannot be divorced. A talaq cannot happen during divorce, and that's the hadith. Inshallah we'll discuss when we talk about fiqh of marriage. But obviously, because you have to be in a calm state when you give divorce, evaluate the situation very properly. And as I said, the reason why I'm discussing this even in front of men is some men do not know that women get so emotional, and women start fighting, for example, for no reason, even though she is on the wrong side, and men get offended, and they think that, okay, she doesn't respect me anymore, I don't have any value, so they start fighting, and the fighting becomes more because woman is having emotional distress, so fighting becomes big, and because of that it is seen that people divorce in such periods. So Rasulullah sallallahu alhamdulillah made a very common rule that if somebody is in her menses, she cannot be divorced. They have to wait until both of them are emotionally in a sound state, and then they can, if necessary, separation is required, then divorce will be practiced. So inshallah, let's talk about the things that they can do. We say no fasting, no salah. So all these things, sisters might think that spiritually I'm going to get killed. I don't have anything to boost my iman. What can I do to preserve my iman, to get high rise in my iman? So there are a lot of things. As I said, you can recite Quran. That's the best thing. Unlike Junub person, you have to wait to take a shower. You can recite from Mus'haf. You can recite from memory. No problem. Inshallah. But if you should know that there are some scholars who prohibit reading from Quran. There are a lot of scholars like that. But I'm telling you the opinion of Imam Malik and Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayh, and many scholars that I have learned with, and also Al-Shawkani, they all said that you can read, there is no problem. But you will find sisters who say that no, it's haram. Well, that's their opinion. If they want to take, they can take it. But the thing here is that we always ask for evidence. Yes, there are hadith which mentions that it should not be done, it should not be read, but it's daif, it's not authentic enough, it's not strong enough to take it. And we need authentic proof from Quran or from Sunnah with the authentic chain. If they do not meet the criteria, we cannot take it in fiqh ruling. Now, other thing is listening to the Quran. Obviously, there is, if you can read, you can also listen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to lay his head in Aisha radiallahu anha's lap and recite Quran when she was in her menses. What if she is reciting Quran and the sajda tilawa, ayah of sajda came? What should she do? So in this case, she does not do the sajda of tilawa. She is exempt. Okay? She does not have to. Now, the topic of can a woman come to masjid in her menses? So this is highly debated topic among the scholars. Okay, so this is one of the things which I find scholars, having evidences on both sides. I am inclined to the position that it is permissible for a woman to come to the masjid even in her menses. And same thing, the evidences that they produce, interpretation is different. Okay. And I can go over it because you'll always hear these debates going on, but I'll just go through it briefly. There is a hadith which states that mosque is off limits to menstruating women and the sexually impure persons, which is in janaba. But this hadith is in Ibn Majah, but this is a da'if hadith, which is not authentic enough, so we cannot take it. Now there is a hadith actually in An-Nasai, wherein Maymuna radiallahu anha, she was our mother, or a wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She said that in this hadith, which is authentic, she said, when we were in menses, we would take the clothes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and put them in the mosque while we were in menses. So they would go into the mosque and put the clothes, take the clothes and put it there, maybe for drying or for whatever need they have. They would go there, do that and come back, take that and come back. So this is an indication, this is a proof. And also on both the sides, the scholars say this hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded that on the two Eids, he said, bring out the young girls and the ones who are in seclusion, and he also told the menstruating women should also come out and come to the Eid prayers, but they should keep away from the prayer place of Muslims. They should keep away from the prayer place of the Muslims, but they should still come. The women in menses should still come. So the scholars on the other side, they said that, look, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, keep away from the prayer place of the Muslims. That it indicates that they cannot come to the masjid. But the scholars on the other side, who say that they can come to the masjid, they said that it just means that they cannot be in the lanes where people stand to offer salah. Obviously, menses, you cannot pray salah, so they have to sit back or somewhere else. They cannot be in the line. They cannot be just blocking the line. They cannot sit in the middle. They have to go in the corner or in the back. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, keep away from the prayer place of the Muslims. So, and this is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari also, that he, Atiyya radiallahu anha, she said, I heard him saying that we should bring out the young girls and those who were secluded, or the young girls who were secluded and the menstruating women, so that they could witness the blessings of Eid and see the gathering of the believers. But those who were menstruating were to keep away from the prayer place itself. Okay, it's very straightforward. So this is the main hadith that scholars take, and they say that she is coming to the masjid area or the musalla area, and but she just cannot pray with them. She has to find some other place to sit down. The reason why I mention this is because I see it's very bad when I see that a sister who a convert or whatever, they come inside and everybody is praying and they are sitting in the back on the chair, and it hurts me when an old lady goes to her and say, "You are in Menses, you cannot be here, you should not be here, get out from here." So that's very harsh, that's very rude. So you need to be aware of these rulings. Okay, so yeah, there are some scholars who say you cannot come to masjid, but we have scholars also who said you can come to the masjid. Okay, you can show all these proofs to them. But if you don't follow some other's opinion, you do not have the right to be harsh on others. You have to be kind to others. Okay, inshallah we'll discuss the fiqh of masjid after this, when we talk about fiqh of salah and everything, and I have a lot of topics to cover in those as well. So that will be a halaqa of itself, inshallah. Until then we can wait. So just other things also that you can do in your menses is dua. It is allowed, it is permissible. As much as dua you want, as much as dhikr you want, there is no restriction. Dhikr is the best thing. You can do as much as dhikr. Not a single scholar said that you cannot do dhikr. That's the best thing. Do as much as dhikr, and that's the way to boost your iman. If you cannot uplift your iman through salah and fasting, this is the best thing. And what's the proof for that? Because Rasulullah SAW instructed the menstruating woman to go out on the day of Eid and recite takbir with the Muslims. Recite takbir with the Muslims. So this is an indication that women in menses can say Allahu Akbar on the day of Eid. So this is a form of dhikr, and that's why it is permitted. And sa'i is something when you go for Hajj and Umrah. We said tawaf she cannot do, but she can do sa'i. Okay, sa'i is like going from Safa to Marwa. Inshallah we'll cover that. But sa'i area, that's not part of the masjid. So that's why you can go there and do it. That's why all scholars say that she can do it. What about touching? Can she touch others? Obviously, it's some cultures had this, that keep the woman in menses away. She should not touch people. She should not touch anybody. This is spiritual impurity. It has nothing to do with physical impurities. Okay, so the Jewish people also used to do this. They used to have separate quarters for women in menses. They would keep them away. But Islam, alhamdulillah, it's not that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought us the true religion, and in this you don't have to treat women like that. As I said, you can even have a physical intimacy with your wife. It's just the only act that is prohibited is the intercourse itself. Okay, and if she touches something, it does not become impure.
So let's talk about the duration of hayd itself. So when does it start and when does it end, and how long this hayd or the menses is? Now, there is no minimum or maximum duration of hayd. So whenever you see the blood of hayd or menses, you immediately start your menses, and that means you will stop your salah, you will stop your fasting, and all the prohibitions will immediately take effect whenever you see that blood of menses. And when does hayd end? There are two ways of determining when it ends. So what happens typically is when the menses is at its end, the white discharge comes out, which is like a white mucus kind of discharge, and when this is seen, that is a clear indication that the menses has ended. And we need to really know this and understand and differentiate this from other discharges, because this is very critical in the sense, as soon as you see white discharge, you are now obligated to offer your salah and also start your fasting. And if it's ignored, then basically you are accountable for not fulfilling the obligations that now it has become obligatory upon you. So that white discharge is very important. And if what happens is some sisters do not get this white discharge. So if that is the case, then you have to look at the second indication of the end of menses, which is complete dryness. So in this particular determination of end of menses, what we need to look at is for one whole day and one night, the sister should be completely free from any blood. So that means complete dryness for at least one day and one night. So if this dryness occurs for one day and one night, then that's it. The sister is now, the menses has ended, and she should start her obligatory salah and fasting and so on. Now, important here thing to note is that you should not wait for white discharge to come. Well, if it comes very good, it's very straightforward. But if you are one day and one night, you have this complete dryness, then that's it. You just go ahead and not wait for white discharge. Now, the complication comes when there is irregular periods or irregular menses. So what happens usually is sisters might have like fixed amount of days of menses. So every month she goes through the menses for like, for example, 6 days or 7 days. Now that is no longer the case. So for example, at one time the sister is getting 10 days of menses, and sometimes maybe 17 days or 20 days. And so how do we know if this is menses or not? As you will see, as we'll talk in the coming slides, there is something called istihada, which is irregular bleeding, which is not part of menses. Okay, so if a sister always has menses for 6 days and suddenly she sees this bleeding, this menses this month, it's like 17 days. So what should she do in such circumstances? Now, what the scholars say here is that she should look at her regular duration of menses. Like every month it is 6 days. Then, in case of this long irregular period of 17 days, she should consider it as 6 days, and consider the remaining 6 to 17 days, that period, as a period free of menses, because now she is in irregular mode of blood discharge. So that is one indication that she has. That it's the condition here is that she is always having regular periods, but somehow this month she is having irregular bleeding. Then she can always default to the previous duration of menses. Now, it's possible that some sisters, they always have this problem of irregular menses. That means every month when their menses comes, there is no fixed duration. So she cannot say like my period is always for 6 days. So it's always changing for her, and it's always very irregular. So what should she do in that case? And now she suddenly has like 17 days or 18 days of menses. Now the scholars say that if that is the case, then she should look at her close relatives of the same size and shape, and whatever her days duration of menses is, that's what she should consider for herself. Right? And there are a lot of abnormalities that also happen. Now, the thing here is that why this happens in the first place. Now, it is said that whenever a sister goes through any biological or psychological factors, there's a change happening, so this affects her menses as well. So she will see there is a delayed bleeding when these situations and circumstances change. So the bleeding duration gets affected by these changes. In some complicated situations or very abnormal situations. There are some sisters who do not have periods for like 4 months, and suddenly she has periods, and this period it lasts long, and maybe like up to 3 weeks or so. So if that is the case, then scholars say that she should consider those extra days as part of menses as well, because now all those period days are accumulating, and that's why it's long. So that indeed happens to some sisters, that they will not get menses for 4 months, and suddenly in the fifth month they'll have menses for about 20-25 days and so on. So if that is the case, then she should wait all that days and not pray salah in them. But if that is not the case, she always gets her menses every month. In that case, in case of irregular periods, she should default to whatever her close relatives duration is, or if she knows if she can use her previous month's duration, she should do that in the case of regular period in the previous months. Okay, now let's look at some of the Islamic rulings of Hayl. Like, what does it really mean? What does that blood mean? Do we need to know a few things about that blood? So the thing is that it is najas. Okay, this blood that comes out during menses, it is najas, which means it is impure. So as we mentioned earlier, that if something is najas or impure, you have to remove it from your clothing and from your body. So for example, a sister had her menses and there was some blood on her clothes, and now she has ended her menses and now she decides to start praying. Now she needs to make sure that those clothes do not have any blood at all, either on her clothes or on her body. So that needs to be clean. Just because you have ended your menses doesn't mean that you can go ahead and pray. So she should make sure that there is no such blood on her clothing and body. Now, one thing that I should also mention, that even though the blood is najas, the woman herself doesn't become najas or impure. Okay, so the impurity is only in the blood. So the physical state of a woman, she is pure. That means she can touch anything, anybody, a man or another woman. So whatever she touches, the other thing, that doesn't become impure. And basically her sweat and clothing doesn't become najas if she touches something. And why I bring this up is because the Jews used to consider the woman in menses as najas. So what used to happen was they never ate food with the woman in menses, and they did not stay in the same house with her. So they used to live in separate houses, and once the menses ended, they would live again with her and eat with her. So in Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that you do not do like what the Jews do, and this is mentioned in Sahih Muslim, by the way. When one of their women menstruated, the Jews would not eat with her or sit with her in their houses. So that's where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that you can do everything except the actual sexual act with her, as it's mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah also in verse 222, that you have to wait until they are purified, then you can have sexual relationship with her. But until then, it is, as the other hadith indicated, it is absolutely fine to eat with her or stay in the same house with her. And she herself is not najas, and the impurity or the najas is only in the blood. Now, the ghusl of hayl, okay, ghusl of hayl. So, the shower that a sister need to take after menses. So, when we say that she needs to pray once her bleeding has stopped, now she just cannot go ahead and make wudu and start her salah. She must do ghusl in order to come out of hayl. Okay, that's a condition. Until this ghusl is done, she cannot start her salah. fasting is an exception in the sense that even if she didn't do ghusl, and it's the time of suhoor, the pre-dawn meal, then she can eat the pre-dawn meal and start her fast, and she can take ghusl later. So, but for salah, she needs to have this ghusl done. So this is important to come out of her hayd or menses. And even this hayd, the ghusl, is required for sexual act. So if a man wants to have a sexual relationship with a woman in menses, and woman can say that my menses has ended, but I did not take any ghusl, so the man cannot have sexual relationship with her. She has to make her ghusl first, and then she now can have that prohibition lifted and perform that sexual act. So how do we do the ghusl of hayd? So this ghusl, this shower, is very similar to the ghusl of janaba that we discussed previously, in the sense that the sister needs to make sure that all her body is completely wet. That means no part of her body is dry. Everything should reach, the water should reach on all parts of her body. Now the important thing is also that she needs to clean all the traces of blood. And in the hadith in Sahih Muslim, it is mentioned that Rasulullah ﷺ told one of the Sahabiya that she should put water over her head and rub it vigorously. And so more emphasis, it's recommended that she rub her hair very well compared to the ghusl of janaba. So that's something that's highlighted in the hadith. And also Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned that the using of lotus leaves to clean herself, and also the reference to taking a piece of cloth that is scented with musk, and so she should purify herself with that. So basically she can use a soap instead of these lotus leaves or scented cloth. So that will serve the purpose. The idea here is that the bad odor that might come because of this menses, that goes away if she uses this soap or something similar to that. And it's something mustahab, it's recommended. And obviously it is said that these things kill diseases which cause fungus and yeasts to get developed, and it also wards off the unpleasant odors. So another thing that the few people ask is that, is there any specific dua that needs to be recited when the ghusl of hayd is completed? No, there is no such dua. Once you take the ghusl of hayd, that means you are eligible to start your salah immediately. As we said earlier, the ghusl of janaba, ghusl of hayd, immediately raises you to the status of purity, even if you did not make wudu. So there is no specific dua, unless that the dua of wudu, if you want to recite, that is fine. And also the scholars mentioned that if someone is in the state of hayd and janaba at the same time, then she can take ghusl, and she can come out of both the impurity of hayd and janaba at the same time. So one ghusl to get rid of two impurities, the impurity of hayd, the menses, or the impurity of janaba, which is the sexual impurity. So both impurities, major impurities, can be eliminated by one ghusl. So you should have that intention of becoming pure. That's what all is needed. Now, how to clean the menstrual blood, like if it gets onto your clothing, right? So the hadith mentions this. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that to take hold of the soiled place and rub it and put it in water, and then rub it in order to remove the traces of blood, and then pour water over it, and then pray in it. So basically, one needs to basically scrap and wash and rinse to clean the clothes. Now, some sister might say that I washed the high blood and I cleaned it as much as I could, but I still see the color. It did not go. So can I wear that clothing and can I offer my salah? So the thing here is that when you clean it well, even if the color doesn't go, that's good enough. Okay, the traces might be there, but you have to clean it thoroughly, rinse it thoroughly, wash it, then it's good enough. And the pills that some sisters take to delay menses, so some sisters take these pills, and they can take these pills, for example, in cases where when it's Ramadan, some sisters want to take pills because they don't want to have menses in Ramadan, because they don't want to miss the opportunity to go and pray Tarawih, and they don't want all the hassle of making these obligatory fasts on later days. So they want to enjoy the Ramadan fully. And also there are some sisters who plan to go for Hajj or Umrah, and for most of the times this is like a once in a lifetime event. So they take their pills to delay their menses, so that the tawaf al-ifada, which is like the most important part of the Hajj, one of the most important. If you do not do tawaf al-ifada, then your Hajj is not complete. That's an obligatory part of the Hajj. So in that case, that's why the sisters take it, so that they can perform tawaf, because a woman in menses, she must delay her tawaf al-ifada, and she does not want to cause all those complications. So that's why she prefers to take pills. Now, is it permissible? Well, the scholars talked about this, and they said that yes, it is permissible as long as it doesn't have harmful effect on her body. That's fine. But they say that it is generally not recommended. It is not recommended. The reason why is that because when you take such kind of pills, it is said that your menses, it gets very complicated. It gets very irregular, for example, as we mentioned earlier. So it's better to avoid it, because your menses now can become very complicated, and all of a sudden you see that you always used to have 5-6 days of menses, and now you're seeing you have 9 to 10 days of menses, or all of a sudden immediately after menses you now see that after 2 days you again have bleeding happening. So all these different kinds of irregularities complicate things. So it's better that you not take these pills if possible. And tawaf al-ifada, how you can make it up, inshallah we'll cover that when we talk about fiqh of Hajj. But there are ways. Some scholars, many scholars in fact, now permit doing tawaf al-ifada when in menses, as long as she has proper ways of stopping it, the bleeding, that is. And also in Ramadan, it's better that she makes it up later on, and this is a matter that is decreed by Allah. So definitely there is this strong need to take these pills. And also women who use the contraceptive pills, again, it is permissible to use such pills in order to avoid or delay having of a baby. But taking these pills, again, you should be aware of the fact that your period might start immediately. Like you see that, okay, my period ended today. Now you'll see that immediately 6-7 days later your menses starts again. So instead of those 21 days period, now that duration is delayed and reduced to just like 6-7 days. So these things you should be ready about, and because these things affect your salah and fasting, so you should know what are you getting into before you take the pills. Now the white discharge that we talked about earlier, which in Arabic is called the al-qassat al-bayda. This is the white discharge. This one is it's white in color, and this is what is used to indicate the end of menses. This is the easiest way, and easiest way to it's a peace of mind when you just see it. That's it. You're completely out of hayd, your menses has ended. Now this particular discharge is emitted by uterus. It comes from the womb, and it's said that it is like mucus, right? It's white mucus, so that's how you know it. And this is the references of this is also mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari as well. So Aisha radiallahu anha used to say, do not hasten until you see the white discharge, meaning that anything that is discharged after the white discharge, it is not menses. Okay, so that clearly indicates that it is the end of menses. And if you do not see white discharge, what do? You use the indicator of complete dryness for 1 day, 1 night, that period. So that is another indication in the absence of white discharge. So now let's talk about another topic, which is called istihada, and the one who suffers from istihada is called mustahada, right? And this is very important to know. Many sisters get confused, and it has a lot of effect on their salah and fasting because of the confusion. So it's very important you know what it is, and you also know how to differentiate it with hayd, menses. So this blood is an abnormality. Okay, it's not normal to have this, but if you have it, there is some problem. This is something irregular, abnormal that's happening, and it happens to many sisters on and off. So what is it? It's a blood which is not menses. Okay, so there are the rulings and the prohibitions that we saw earlier of hayd. It doesn't apply to istihada. It usually happens after menses, so a woman might see that white discharge, and after a few days she will see that the blood will started to come again, or the blood, this kind of bleeding usually is continuous and lasts for a long amount of days. So this is an indication that this is irregular blood. This is not the blood of hayd. It can also happen before menses in certain cases. The difference here between hayd and istihada is that this particular bleeding in istihada, this comes from vein or vagina. It's not from uterus. Okay, the vein can burst and can cause this bleeding to happen. Now, you should know the differences in characteristics between istihada and hayd. So, for example, the color itself, in istihada it is red color, but in hayd it starts with very dark red, and then it, as the days progresses, it might change and maybe becoming brown or yellow. But initially it starts with dark red, the hayd, but in istihada it's red, clear red. It's a blood that comes from vein. In terms of consistency, istihada is thin in consistency, while hayd, as we discussed earlier, it is heavy, it is like thick. And the odor is offensive in hayd, but in istihada it is not offensive. It is considered weak odor. And the quantity that is discharged in istihada, it's like small, it's kind of like nose bleeding. So that's how you differentiate between hayd and istihada. Look at the characteristics of the blood, and that's the best way to know. So the important thing about istihada is that if you have this bleeding, you should still offer your salah. Your salah is not waived. And some sisters just see that, oh, I have bleeding, I don't have to pray anymore. That's not the thing. You are responsible, and you have to answer this on the day of judgment, why you missed the salah, because now it is obligatory for you. So you should learn this kind of knowledge as well. And you know, there are no restrictions, as I said earlier, as there of hayd and nifas. Everything is different. Everything needs to be performed. But as we said earlier, anything that comes out from the private parts, your wudu is broken. So every time this comes out, you have to make wudu. But now, if this particular bleeding is very consistent, it happens again and again, and like even when the sister starts praying, this blood comes out. So now she's very confused, like, what should I do? I can't just keep on breaking my prayer and make wudu, then come back and start my prayer and then break it if the blood comes out. So there is an easier way out of this, and we see many ahadith that talk about it. So if a sister is suffering from this continuous istihada bleeding, then what she needs to do is, obviously cover herself with appropriate clothing so that the blood doesn't get discharged. And whenever the prayer time starts, she needs to make wudu and then offer her salah. Okay? And even if the bleeding happens during that period, that is okay. She can still continue to pray even the blood is getting discharged. But the only difference here is that once the prayer time ends, her wudu is broken. Okay, so this is the special thing with the istihada, when your wudu will break with the ending of salah time, because now you are in a special concession that your wudu is not broken even if the bleeding happens, but your wudu gets broken when the time of salah ends. Like if you made wudu during Asr time, and then for Maghrib salah you have to make new wudu even if you do not go to bathroom or any of the wudu breakers did not occur. You still have to make wudu. And it's clearly mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a woman came to him and she said that she was suffering from irregular bleeding or istihada, so she asked, should I stop praying? Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned that no, that is just from a vein and it is not menses, basically meaning that she should not stop praying, continue the salah. So now the problem now is a sister she has her menses and she sees white discharge, and now she knows that blood came out again after the white discharge. So what should she do? She should immediately consider that this is istihada and still continue to start prayer. But now the problem is, like, she did not see white discharge, and she waited for 1 day and 1 night, and it was completely dry. And when we say completely dry, it basically means that a sister uses a piece of cotton and she inserts into herself, and it should come out dry, completely dry. There's no traces of any blood or any white or any brown or yellowish substance. It should be completely dry, nothing on it. So even if such a thing happens that it's completely dry, then after like 2-3 days, she notices that the bleeding started. Now in this particular case, the scholars said that she should consider this part of menses and not istihada. Alright, so this was the opinion of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Abu Hanifa, and Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayh. So again, let me repeat this. So if a white discharge was not seen and there is a period wherein no bleeding occurred, like 2-3 days, and then the bleeding occurred again, then she should consider this part of menses, and this is not istihada. But in case of white discharge, it is very straightforward, very clear. If you just see it, that's it. Everything that comes out after white discharge is istihada. All right. So in the other case wherein the complete dryness was there and then it started later on, this is just to make things easy for the sister, and the Sharia doesn't impose difficulty on people, because now she like noticed that after one day and one night and it was completely dry, so she started her prayer, and now this bleeding happened again. So in that case she should stop praying, because this is part of menses. Okay. And also it is said that some contraceptive procedures that people use, that can also cause disruption in menses. Just for your knowledge, that the IUD, or the intrauterine device, which is like a T-shaped device that they put in uterus as a contraception mechanism, this does cause problem in menses. So and it's one of the major causes of istihada that can occur, causing a lot of confusion thereby. Like it can make menses longer, and basically it restricts the flow of blood out of the uterus, and the blood flows more slowly, and that's where the complication happens. It can also cause menses to come earlier. Okay, so the other thing is the other kind of discharges, which are not really blood, are it's called the moisture. It's a regular discharge. It's like a water-like transparent fluid, and it becomes kind of white after drying, and it's clear. Okay, it's clear discharge, and it is said that this particular discharge, it is tahira, it is pure, basically meaning if it's on the clothes, if it's on your clothes, you do not have to wash it. You can still pray with it on your clothes, and then you're good to go. Okay, unlike istihada, wherein if you see it, every time you make wudu, you have to wash the blood and the impurity and then make wudu, and then you're ready to go with salah. In this particular case, you do not even have to wash. You can wash it if you want, but it is pure. It is. This is the opinion of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and many other majority opinion of the scholars, stronger of the two opinions. But the one thing that you should know, since this is coming from the private parts, our basic rule is that it will break your wudu. So if you see such discharge, you should make wudu. Very similar to like gas coming out of your body, which is not najas, but your wudu breaks. Now the other thing is the spotting, or also called al-qadra, which is not water-like transparent fluid like the moisture, but it is more like yellowish or brownish discharge. And this is again not part of menses at all, and basically this happens after the end of menses. So if you see white discharge and after that you see yellowish brownish discharge, it is this al-qadra, or the spotting. So this again is not istihada, this is not menses, this is pure. Again, just like moisture, this is pure also, and similar to moisture, this is going to break your wudu, and this is pure, as is the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Shafi'i, An-Nawawi, and Ibn Uthaymin rahmatullah alayh, that this does not need to be washed from your clothes, but it does indeed break wudu. Okay, and if it becomes like continuous, like it's like very very regular, like istihada, then you can use the same concession as in istihada, wherein you make a fresh wudu at the beginning of your salah, even though you didn't go to bathroom. The end of a prayer time automatically breaks your wudu if you're suffering from this continuous discharges, which breaks your wudu. Okay, and how we say this, what's the proof that it is pure? We have this in Sahih al-Bukhari, wherein Atiyya radiallahu anha, she used to say that we did not regard yellowish and brownish discharge after tuhur or after becoming pure as being of any significance. It's not at all significant, meaning that they don't have to do any ghusl, they don't have to worry about cleaning it from their clothes and so on. And it can become these kind of spotting and moisture. You will see it more if it's like there's like physical exertion or sports activities involved, so you can expect to see such discharges. Now let's talk about another kind of blood that happens in sisters. It's called the postnatal blood or the postpartum bleeding. This particular blood is discharged after a woman gives birth to a child, typically, and it lasts for like about 40 days. Okay, and sometimes this kind of blood also happens during labor contractions before delivery and during the birth as well. So if the bleeding is accompanied during labor contractions, then it is nifas, okay, it is the postnatal bleeding, even though birth has not taken place yet. But if a pregnant woman has any bleeding, then and if she does not have any labor contractions and does just bleeding happen, then it is considered istihada, because most often these pregnant women do not have menses or hayd. Okay, so if she sees any blood, it is istihada, it is irregular bleeding, unless it is accompanied by labor contractions. In that case, it will be considered as nifas. Okay, and those restrictions apply. So hayd and nifas has exactly similar prohibitions, exactly similar way to come out, and exactly same way of determining whether it ended or not. The only difference is the duration of this bleeding. So in case of menses or hayd, it's about 5 or 6 days depending on the woman, but in nifas it might go up to 40 days. Okay, so you don't have to wait till 40 days. For example, in some sisters it might end after like 25 days. So that's it. That's the end of her nifas, and she has to start her salah and the obligatory fasting after that, if the time has come for that. And how does she know her nifas has ended? The same thing. She has to look at white discharge, or if that is not taken place, then she has to look for complete dryness by using a piece of cotton or something similar and putting inside her, and that should come out dry. That she should need to wait for like about 1 day or 1 night or so. And other secretions that can happen, the vaginal secretions which are not like blood, for example, like the amniotic fluid in pregnant women. It's like thin liquid that looks like water. So that is not blood. Okay, so that is not considered nifas. And in some very rare situations, it is said that some women might not even bleed after giving birth. Okay, so the nifas bleeding does not even happen to them. In that case, she doesn't even have to take ghusl. Okay, so she can just come out of nifas after giving birth. And this is the opinion of Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and Ibn Uthaymin rahmatullah alayh. But generally she should wait for whatever her bleeding time is, and then if she wants to pray, she has to take ghusl, and she is ready for every other prohibition to be lifted. Okay. Now, if some sisters, it's possible that they'll see this bleeding for 45 days, for example. So what should they do? So the maximum duration of nifas is 40 days. So anything which is more than 40 days, that will be considered as istihada, which is irregular bleeding. That is not postnatal blood. Postnatal blood can only happen maximum of 40 days. And what's the proof of it? Well, we see this in a hadith in At-Tirmidhi, wherein our Sahabiya Salama radiallahu anha, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she said that at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the woman in nifas, she would wait for 40 days. Okay, and this is also reported by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, that the woman in nifas should wait for approximately 40 days, right? Okay. Now, many sisters ask the question that it happens that the nifas, this bleeding, it stops before 40 days. For example, it stopped in like 30 days. And so what she does is she waits for 1 day and 1 night, and she notices there's no blood, so she starts praying. And then after 2-3 days, she notices that the bleeding returned. And it's like maybe like the 33rd day, the bleeding returned. So what should she do with that kind of blood? What is that blood? So the scholars mentioned that this is part of the nifas blood, because since it is within that 40-day period, she should consider that this blood is part of nifas, even though there was 1 day and 1 night complete dryness. Okay, and this basically is also easy for her in the sense that she does not have to start her salah. She gets the concession. But all the prohibitions that we mentioned in haid also still applies to her, meaning that she cannot participate in sexual activity, and that prohibition of touching Qur'an and so on and so forth will apply to her. And this was the opinion of Ibn Abbas rahmatullah alayh. Now the final slide for the fiqh of purification. Now this bleeding, we said nifas, it happens after the childbirth, regular childbirth, which is like usually after 9 months. But unfortunately, in some sisters, she might have a miscarriage, and after miscarriage, she might see like there's this prolonged bleeding for like 20, 30, or 40 days. Now, is this nifas or not? Because technically, she did not give birth to a regular baby. She had a miscarriage like after maybe 2 months or 3 months and so on. Or maybe someone chose to have abortion because of maybe there is like a medical complication that happened or so on. So if abortion happened and sister sees that there is blood coming out, now what should she do about her salah, about her fasting? What are the rulings for this? So the scholars discussed this issue, and they looked at all the ahadith, and they said that if such a thing happens, which is miscarriage or abortion, then it is divided into 3 categories, as I have listed it there. Now, first is the period of the first 80 days. Now, if somebody had a miscarriage or abortion in these first 80 days, then any bleeding that happens during this period of miscarriage or abortion, then it is istihada. It is not nifas, so she should start praying even if she sees the bleeding. Now, the third scenario is when if the miscarriage or abortion happened after 120 days. In that case, it is definitely nifas. Okay, it is definitely nifas. So first and third is clear, but something which is in the middle, which is between 80 to 120 days, if a miscarriage or abortion happened in this duration, then it is said that we need to look at the embryo. We have to examine the embryo. If the human features are visible in that embryo, then we say that the blood is that of nifas, but if there is no human features, then it is istihada. Okay, so by human features we say that the head, hand, foot, these are visible. Okay, so that's what the scholars mention, and they basically derive this ruling from the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that, basically paraphrasing it, he mentioned that the creation of any of you, it's put together in the mother's womb for 40 days. So like the first 40 days, what happens is our creation is basically put together, right? Becomes the zygote and so on, and the fetus. So that's the first 40 days. And then he said that it becomes an halaqa for a similar period. So the 40 to 80 days, it becomes halaqa. Halaqa is basically a piece of thick coagulated blood. Okay, so that's the first 80 days, or the 40 to 80 days, which is halaqa. And then he said between 80 to 120 days, or he said then it becomes like a chewed piece of flesh for a similar period. So another 40 days, it becomes a chewed piece of flesh, which is, the actual word is mudgha, right? Mudgha. So, and basically mudgha, the human features, it starts to appear in this stage, but it may or may not have, depending on the fetus. So every embryo is different. Okay, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that after this period, that is, which is after 120 days, Allah sends an angel to this embryo, and he is enjoined to write down 4 things. So this angel comes to the embryo and he writes down 4 things for this particular baby, and it is said to him, it is said to the angels that write down his deeds. The first thing, write down his deeds. Second thing, write down his provision. And third thing, write his lifespan, how much he is going to live. And the fourth thing, write down whether he is doomed for hell or paradise. Okay, so these 4 things are written. His deeds, which are good or bad, just write everything down, and then write his provision, his risk, how much he is going to get in this world. Is he going to be rich? Is he going to be poor? And so on. And also, what is his lifespan, when he is going to die? And also, whether he is going to go in Jannah or Jahannam, this is also written at that particular time. And at that particular time, the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, it says that the soul is breathed into him. Okay, the ruh, it's breathed into him, and that embryo, after 120 days, it becomes like a human. It's a real human. Okay, so that's why we say that definitely after 120 days, if bleeding happens, then that's the nifas blood, and she should not pray salah or fast, and so on. So that was the paraphrased hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari. You can check it out. So now we have concluded, alhamdulillah, the fiqh of purification. All these different slides, you can go through it. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts these halaqas, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us remember all these rulings and helps us perfect our worship and increase our knowledge and give us the ability to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We pray to Allah that He forgive us, and anything that was said incorrectly in this halaqa, we ask His forgiveness, and we ask Him to guide us to the straight path. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.